So I hope you guys got to listen to a few. Any reflections that you want to say or questions that you have? You're going to get to see another example next, and they are fifth graders. But I will say, and maybe it was the time that we took to record this one, or maybe it's just because fifth graders are fifth graders, but I feel like the quality of these podcasts might be a little bit better than the next one that you're going to see. But when you listen to the fifth grade ones, you're going to be like, oh, those are fifth graders. So it's funny. It's interesting, but they do have good energy. And I think because it was an after school, like you kind of sign up thing, they were a little bit more excited to do it. They were very excited. They're the cutest. Their little voices. And I don't know if you know anything about Catawba County. This school it's Ban Oak. So it's out very rural Catawba County. And So their little country accents make my heart smile. It's really cute. All right, so we'll move on to our next example. This was a weather project, and my dad is a retired teacher, but he was working part-time at Van Oak, which is one of the schools I serve. He taught 2 fifth grade science classes. So we actually got to work together on this project. These fifth grade students researched a city in the United States, and they had to report certain weather readings they learned in their weather unit. That included wind speed, precipitation, high and low pressures. And from those readings that they learned, they gave a forecast about what was to come. That took them, I want to say we worked on just the research part and writing the script for about a week. And then I pulled them out alone. It was just me. I pulled them out to record their episodes. We did the same structure of they listened to a few podcast examples, they chose their city, they researched their city, and they wrote their script. Again, it had to have the hook, the music, and a send-off. With this group of students, we allowed them to choose their own music. So we used a website called Ben Sound. I'll type that in the chat. It is royalty-free music. It's essentially just instrumental. They found the tune that they liked. Some of them sang songs, they wrote their own song. Some of them just played the music. When you listen to them, you'll be able to just click through. Especially if you want to find one where they wrote their own song, they'll have their intro and then the music. So you'll be able to click through those to hear the ones that wrote their own songs. Of course, we reviewed their scripts before recording to make sure they had all the content that they needed to have, both weather related and podcast related. Also to make sure that they, of course, were not just being silly fifth graders. Again, this is what the site looks like. Some of them, if they were allowed to choose, if they wanted to work on their own or if they wanted to work in a small group. So you'll be able to see that some of them, like Blake and Abby, they chose to work on their own. It was very interesting to see the dynamic between the ones who worked together and then the ones who chose to work alone. I think some of them wanted to have more control over what their podcast sounded like. So I would like you to listen to both different kinds so that you can hear the dynamic between the two. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to listen to this one as well. These episodes are a little bit longer. Well, some of them are, than the garden podcasting. That's part of because these are older kids. They had more to say. Also, older kids tend to be able to have a longer attention span. I think by the time we did the garden project, we did have the older, she split it up that year to where 4-6 came to garden club in one chunk of time at the beginning of the year. And then she had K3 come at a different time. So she had 2 groups of garden club kids. So by the time we actually were ready to delve into podcasting and record, I think it was just the K3 kids. So that's why those kids are a lot younger than these. So again, I'm going to give you, since these are a little bit longer and there's a lot more of them, let's do 10 minutes, which will really be 9. Let's just come back at 10:10. And if you have any questions before then, feel free to unmute or type in the chat and let me know what questions you have. All right, so it is 10:10. Does anybody have any reflections or differences they heard between those two podcasts? They're definitely different. All right, so we will move on. Here's our little recording studio. We use the nurse's office. They have their little scripts. All right, so we're going to talk about other ways to use podcasting in your classroom besides creating your own channel. These are student-directed podcasts and ways to use student-directed podcasts. One of the first things that got me interested in podcasting, I follow a teacher named Bethany Humphrey on Instagram, and she posted this as it's a small, well, I guess not a small group, but it's a rotation in her class for her students to listen to a podcast for the week. And this has been several years ago. That's the link to the Instagram post, which if you're logged into Instagram on your device, I'll go ahead and send you in. But she's a great teacher to follow. This particular podcast was a Brain's Own. And of course, it probably had to do with their content. She uses a 4-3-2-1 reflection sheet, which she sells in her TPT store. I don't own it. I did create my own version when I was in the classroom. It's basically let's say, 4 facts you learned, 3 things you didn't know, 2 things you want to know more about, something along those lines. I also, before this, I wanted to be able to give you guys something. I found this reflection on TPT, and it's actually free. I will paste that in the link, and it is created by Hillary. I guess it's even. And that's something you can use during your rotation. It's a great way to get that speaking and listening standard kind of underway where they can listen and learn something new. You can also put your own podcasting channel for them to listen to in those sections as well. These are some of our favorite that we use in classes. I also work with our personalized learning team in our district. Podcasting is one of those things that we include on playlists. So these are just some of our favorites where we find good podcasts to carry on the content for those playlists. But Why and Wow in the World are really all over the place in terms of why are fireworks bright, or just those strange questions that kids have. So that's really fun to have as an exploration. Or you can probably find things that are aligned with your curriculum as well. Some of our other favorites are Brain's Own, the Stuff You Missed in History class, and Stuff You Should Know podcasts. Those are both geared toward middle and high school students. And as you can see in this presentation, all of these are clickable. So if you click on these icons, it's actually going to take you to the podcast so that you can listen to it from there. There's also a link right here to 19 great learning podcasts for the classroom. It's where I got some of the ones that I use a lot, but there's also plenty of others. There's a lot of storytelling podcasts. There's a lot of science podcasts. The reason I include what stuff you missed in history class is some of those are kind of hard to come by. Sarah Lassiter is one of the teachers that I learned about podcasting from at Bridging the Gap. She has her own SoundCloud podcast channel, and it is where she gives AP biology tips for her class, but it's also public, so everyone can access it. So that is an episode or a channel that she created herself for her students. So that's a good example of how a teacher could use that in their own classroom for their own students. If you are into flipping your classroom, a lot of students have access to cell phones and tablets, maybe even a device like a Chromebook or something else in your district. Podcasts don't use as much data as videos do. So if they wanted to be able to listen or at home, it doesn't quite take up as much data. But they can also even download the episode to their device before they leave school if they're able to connect to the school Wi-Fi. So some of the examples that I learned at Bridging the Gap were, they were mostly talking about high school students, but when they're working out or if they're working a job where they can listen in earbuds, maybe they have quite a commute to and from school, it's something that they can listen to and not have to have eyes on. If you aren't into flipping for them to listen to at home, you can also record your own podcast for students to learn in small groups and independent learning time. Like I mentioned before, we're working heavily towards becoming a personalized learning district. And this is something that our teachers do a lot so that their students have somebody wants to come in. So their students have instruction without them necessarily sitting and being right with them. That's also something that just popped in my brain. If you taught a lesson, you had a mini lesson, and then there were still a lot of questions, but you didn't necessarily quote unquote have time to do another mini lesson, you can just explore and explain more through a podcast. Might be easier with math to go through a video with a whiteboard, but there's lots of different options. I also found that in my own classroom, I had a speaking and listening, or it was really just a listening center. And it primarily started with videos. And over time, they got tired of watching videos. So I did start mixing it up with audios. I used NPR a lot. And a lot of other things just to kind of keep things interesting and not so mundane. These are teacher-directed podcasts. In our district, we do a lot of in-house PD that we plan on our own. We do try to follow that personalized learning playlist choice avenue. And so we do use a lot of these podcasts to include in our choice boards or playlists. These are some of our favorites. There's Teachers on Fire. Again, all of these are clickable, so you can click right out to those podcasts and use them or listen to them whenever you would like. So there's Weston and Molly I can't ever remember how to say their name. It's like, is it Chesnick? I think he spoke at NCTAS 2 years ago. And then there's the Google Teacher Tribe podcast. We are a Google district, so I always find something interesting from Matt and Casey. There's We Are Teachers. They have a lot of podcasts on there as well, and as well as TeacherCast. And then a little shameless plug for our own North Carolina podcast put on by our own DTL team. And Stacy Lovedahl is one of my good friends. She actually was in the position that I am in now. So I took her place when she moved to DPI. So this is something that I love to listen to. They interview and talk to educators in North Carolina. So it's very interesting to know what's going on in other parts of our state. Next, I want to hear from you guys, and I hope that this is something that we can continue to build on and use in the future. This is a Padlet where I would like for you to put ideas that you've come up with just in this session, or maybe you had ideas before this session for podcast content that you would like to create. Also, if you've listened to podcasts or used podcasts in your classroom that maybe I didn't list before, I would love to hear those things as well. In this Padlet, I do have it sectioned off by like grade cluster, so we can kind of keep that separate. You'll see that there are already a few ideas in there because I used the same thing yesterday. That way we can continue to build our ideas and add to it, refer back to it, especially if you keep this presentation in your drive. Hopefully people will keep coming back I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to add what you would like to add to that Padlet. And then we'll come back and talk more about Anchor and how to really get started. It looks like a lot of the typing has subsided. I like some of these ideas with a podcast on community service, STEM podcasting, somebody said that the other day. And back in the day, before I got in this position, I was a media coordinator. And I also had a STEM class once a week where I saw a group of a whole class of students. It was an hour and a half. And I pushed for an hour and a half. I only had 45 minutes. I told my principal, I was like, I cannot do STEM in 45 minutes. And I only saw the kids every other week. So I pushed for having them for an hour and a half to really get through the whole engineering process. But one place that I fell short was reflection, because we always ran out of time. But I feel like this podcast would give them something quick. They would know how to do it. There would be a whole channel for it. It would be a game changer for being able to do that last piece of the engineering process. Instructional coaching, that's great too. And yeah, listening during lunch, game duty, gate duty, you can always listen to a podcast. Just pop some earbuds in, even just one earbud, and you can still listen. All right, so those are great ideas. There's also a lot of teacher-directed podcasts that I had no idea existed, and that's why I love stuff like this. So thank you guys for your ideas and sharing. Next, what we're going to do is I want you guys to actually go into Anchor and play around so that you can see just how easy it really is. You can get a free account. You can use Google. It's very easy. You don't get a lot of emails from Anchor. I actually don't even know if I've ever gotten an email from Anchor, other than if it was a notification of someone's listened or something of that nature. As you probably saw when you went to the Garden podcast, you had a lot of icons, and those icons are where you can listen to that podcast, the other platforms. The meteorologist, I don't think there are any. I think we just stuck to, it was more of a reflection for parents and to wrap up the unit. One thing that has come from the Garden project is they're on so many platforms. We've had so many listens, which kind of may have contributed from the student showcase at NC Ties and all of our presentations. But someone reached out to do advertisement on the podcasting channel. And she was going to get like 11 cents per listen from this advertisement company. And what she ended up doing was using that account to continue to purchase things for the Garden Club. So if this is something that you're going to take big and bold and beyond, and you get a lot of good listens, I know not everybody likes to listen to advertisement, but I also know that funding is always cut short. So if you do have a club or something of that nature, there is money to be made out in the podcasting world, and Anchor is one of those platforms that gets you connected to people on the outside. So real quick, I'm just going to go out and show you guys. I'm already signed in. This is my dashboard. This is available on one platform. I have never actually recorded an honest episode on this. This is just for me to use to show. I thought that I was going to at one point in time, but then I ended up having enough teachers willing to try it out for me. So when I'm ready to start a new episode, just click new episode. This is where if I have my students recording audio outside of Anchor and they share it with me, this is where I can upload those files to create the episode. Recording is really easy from here. I'm not going to actually record right now, but you just start recording. As soon as you record, it pops you over to the library. In the library, it's going to have every audio you've ever recorded on your channel. And that's how you're going to create your episode. You just quickly click this little plus sign. You can add, there's my intro. Let's pretend this is my music. And then this is my content. So it really quickly just pops everything in there. You can click and drag once you get into this editing mode. A couple of new features, they have Spotify music. You can also post messages into certain listeners, and there are transitions built in. Anchor has grown a lot since we first started using it, and some of these latter, what is the word? These customizations have been added since. So when you're all finished, you just click Save Episode. You will have a title. Oh, I'm using the wrong keyboard. That could be a problem. And a description. You can also decide if you want it to be published later. You can have episode art. So I could, edit this to say that this is season 2, episode number 4. And then I go back to the top and click publish now. You can also save it as a draft if you don't want to go ahead and do that. So I can publish this to my personal sites as well right from here. I have analytics that I can watch. I have plays. I can see my plays. I can look at plays per episode. And then if I click on my dashboard, here's my public site. I can see what my dashboard looks like. And from here, I can edit, I can delete any of these things. Another wonderful thing about Anchor is, let's say I listened to one of my episodes and my intro was messed up. Well, if I click on that episode, I can edit that episode. Oh, I think I have to revert it to a draft. Well, now I can't see it. Let me go back. Okay, so I can edit the file and I can go in and pull apart, delete certain features that I didn't want, delete the whole episode altogether. So if you ever publish an episode and you need to go back in and change, it pulls the episode and the audios back apart so that you can continue editing. You do not have to, as you could tell when you were listening, you could probably, if you were paying attention, you can see the audio titles change, but it still sounds very cohesive. Everything flows really well. All right, so what I want you guys to do next is I want you to actually go to Anchor, and I want you to take one of the ideas from Padlet, or it could be your own, and I want you to record an episode of your podcast introducing yourself, your topic of the channel. You can always delete it later, but I just want you to go in and play around for a little bit. And then I want you to share your podcast back with me. I have a form and I'll put all of those links in the chat. I think you all should still have the Anchor site linked, but I will link that as well. And we have, let's see, this ends at 10:50. Let's say 15 minutes, which isn't a whole lot of time, I know, but to get in there and play around. And then we will come back and wrap up some things that we have to do for NCBOLD. And if you have any questions in the meantime, I'm here. You can unmute, you can type it in the chat. Anything that you need, I can stop sharing so you can share your screen and show me something. You just let me know, and I am here to help you guys. So we'll come back in about 15 minutes. So sorry, friends, I clicked the wrong computer. So how to share your anchor. Let me go back to my dashboard. And from my dashboard, you can copy the URL right here with the little link icon in the circle. So when you click that, then you can just go over to that form and paste.
Okay, I think I did it backwards. I went a different way, so I'm gonna go back and try to see if I can do it this way. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so it is 10:44, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I appreciate you guys for joining me today in this presentation about podcasting. Anytime you need me, feel free to reach out. My Twitter handle's on there. I should have put my email. It's, I can type it in the chat. Suggestions for how long a teacher we have had a big discussion about that, especially with remote learning, for how long podcasts or just anything they're listening to in general. I say 15 to 20 minutes, especially for elementary school students. There is a study, I wish I could remember it right off the top of my head, but it was by age. So by age, what their attention span is. I even would say for high schoolers in the age that we are in of TikTok and YouTube videos and reels and all of those things, it seems like it needs to be more fast paced. I really wouldn't go beyond 30 minutes just because their attention span isn't that long. Also, a podcast is meant to kind of break down a little bit more of what would be lectured, if that makes sense. For students creating podcasts, I would typically say 15 minutes. It also depends on the content and what you're expecting them to talk about in their podcast. With your high school students, if they're talking about something that's a lot more content and there are more expectations for what they're expected to speak about, I would say no more than 30 minutes. Then again, 15 minutes probably would be plenty of time before they start rambling like I'm doing right now. So here are the credits for this slide reel. I got this off the Slides Carnival. And then here, I do that every time. Here is your QR code. Well, it will not let me move it. If I can get out of full screen. There it was. Exit. Oh my gosh. Well, here we go. Here is your QR code to get credit for this session. And I appreciate you all for participating and sharing. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your summer. Oh my gosh, I keep doing the wrong thing. Yesterday, I did not have a QR code under here. Oh, good. There it is. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you, guys.
And I need the alternative. The scan is not working. Can you put it in the chat? The alternative link for attendance.
Yes, I can do that as well.
Thank you. I don't know why it's not working.
Heather, thank you for this session. It was awesome. I've been wanting to do this for years, and Anchor is really user-friendly. So I appreciate the time to practice and play around in it. I had put a question in there prior as well. In another podcast session I was in, some people were saying you have to make sure the platform is approved in your district. Is Anchor kind of one of those that's kind of universal and most districts use?
That is a really good question. I'm not 100% sure. Our district does things a little bit different. We basically just follow terms of service. So as long as our students are following terms of service, if, for example, I wanted my 10-year-olds to have their own podcasting channel, that would have to be approved by our district. So that would get added to our list of approved sites. But as long as I'm the content manager and I'm following steps to monitor those students, that's not really an issue in our district. I would definitely check with your technology team just to make sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.